Hello and welcome. It's nice to see you guys, and I see that the conversation is already going in our chat. So hello guys, tell me if you can hear me. If you can, let's just get started. So my name is Mike. I'm one of the teachers at VizAcademy.uk. So if you want to learn a little bit more about us, visit our YouTube channel, as you already are, but you can also visit our website. So what is going to be our today's topic? It's the best computer for 3D architecture and 3ds Max. So what is exactly a best computer right now? So we don't have just one answer that's going to be definitive, because whatever you're going to really buy this week, it's probably going to be a little bit outdated before it actually arrives to your door. The computer industry is ever growing, and we know that it's impossible to just show you one product that's going to be perfect, but we can actually guide you what kind of parts or what system you should be using when trying to work in ArchViz and architectural field. So let's get started and actually talk about the main software that we're going to be using to create ArchViz and 3D visualizations. So it's going to be 3ds Max. 3ds Max is easy obtainable at Autodesk.com. Please check out their options for students and also free trials, and maybe you can also apply for indie version. That's a new thing, so not a lot of people know about it. So guys, if you can just check out those three options. So what are our hardware requirements? So it's going to be 64-bit Intel or AMD multi-core processor. That's really not telling us a lot. So pretty much it's basically almost any modern processor. They no longer manufacture 32 bits, and it's actually something that we can pretty much ignore. Graphics hardware. So quite contrary to the belief all around the world, we don't really need a titan of a graphics card to work as a 3D designer. Quite contrary, we just needed to handle a few viewports. So pretty much GPU is going to be only responsible for displaying what we see on our screen, and the better the GPU you have, the more frames per second you're going to have, and a little bit let's say more of your viewport is going to work a little bit more fluently, but it's not going to be the core element of your build, and it's never going to. But one thing I would like to also point out is that a lot of our students start with just laptops that they have bought for their studies. And to run 3ds Max, all you need is 4 GB of RAM. We do recommend to start with something around 8 GB, just as they recommend around here. But to run 3ds Max, you only need 4. The minimum entry to basically be able to create any visuals is approximately 8 GB. 16 is a little bit better, but I'm going to talk about that in a second. So, and yeah, 9 GB of free disk space to install. Online, over the internet, you can find quite different information about the amount of hard drive space you need for this installation, so be advised that approximately 10 GB is going to be best. And this is pretty sweet 3-button mouse. Yes, it's a must. So no touchpads, make sure to use your 3-button mouse, at least 3-button mouse. So guys, since we know that for 3D ArchViz, and we're going to be using, wow, 32 GB, that's a lot. So for our needs, because we're using Corona Renderer, we're going to be focusing on our processor and RAM, because those are the main elements that we think are going to be, well, the most helpful in your endeavors. Remember that when you start with just a regular laptop that has 8 GB of RAM, that's totally fine. And you don't really need to get a better laptop. Usually, If your processor is a little bit on the slower side, you're still going to be able to get exactly the same type of quality that anybody else would with a faster computer. But your only limitation is how many objects you can add to your scene. So 8 gigabytes is going to require a bit narrower shots, maybe few less props, but the quality is going to be exactly the same. If I would send you a scene that renders on my computer for, let's say, 5 minutes, and it's going to render the same amount of noise level on your computer for an hour, it's still going to be the same picture. It's just a little bit more time it's just going to take a little bit more time to compute. With 16 gigabytes of RAM, we can pretty much create almost anything. 16 gigabytes is going to be the sweet spot that you are aiming for, especially at the beginning. But it's worth mentioning that any service, any clerk at your local computer store is going to be able to suggest you any extra RAM to your computer or laptop. It's very easy to obtain, it's super easy to install, and it's actually fun to do so. But if you're going to give your laptop to a professional, they usually don't charge a lot. We're going to talk about our hardware in a second when I will be doing the benchmark, because I'm also going to tell you how to test your computer in a field of battle. So in a second, we're also going to talk about larger scenes. So for 24 gigabytes and more, this is a spot where you can pretty much say that you have a professional grade computer. We're not talking about projects like Pixar. We're talking about ArcViz photorealistic shots and delivering photorealistic shots to your clients. What may happen if you don't have enough RAM when working with Corona? Not really much, because at some point, if you're going to run out of RAM, you're just going to see this warning. It's not going to stop your render, but it's going to inform you that some parts of your hard drive, of your scene are going to be stored on your local drive. So the render time may be a little bit higher, but you're still getting the same quality. And in case you are in a hurry and, well, the RAM isn't really enough, you can pretty much just use any kind of render farm. We do recommend to use Rebus or Anima render farm. Both of them are really great, and they do come in with a lot of good surprises. Wow, in Dubai, really, I love your work and you're an amazing teacher. Thank you. That's really, thank you. That's really nice to hear. Guys, by the way, I would like to know who's joining in. Where are you from? What are your experience with 3ds Max? And obviously, have you already started learning 3ds Max? Because this is the one and only topic that's going to be important for us, because 3ds Max is an amazing piece of software that we use, especially I do, in my day-to-day work. So what is really your RAM going to be responsible for? Let's see it in Task Manager. So in this case, we're going to go to Performance, and we can see a little bit of a sneak peek. What do I have under my hood? So first of all, we've got 19 gigabytes of memory used right now. Please note that I'm running a stream. I have multiple 3ds Maxes open, and now I'm launching my Photoshop to only show you what's going on with our computer. So a little bit of RAM usage went up, and now our CPU is starting to really calculate something, and we also have a little bit of GPU and disk movement. What it really means is that we are just opening a program. So it's not going to have a huge impact on your RAM unless you start working on some kind of specific project. So in this case, I'm going to open one of our students' work if any of those is going to work. So, okay, this is a work in progress by one of our students. And at this moment, you can see that the quality is already there. And if I recall correctly, Khan is dealing with 16 gigabytes of RAM. But our team is going to help you decide and understand what kind of computer you have and what exactly you can do, because there's going to be a lot of computers out there. So what are we going to specify them by? So first of all, let's just jump into picking some kind of computers. And for those of you guys that are going to use MacBooks or Apple devices, don't worry, you can also use the same computer that you already have. You don't have to necessarily invest in anything new. You can always just install Boot Camp and work on both of the systems at the same time. Windows users cannot really do that, and that's a bit of an advantage for those of you that enjoy working on Macintosh. And definitely, you can use both of those systems in parallel way, but don't install any Windows using Parallels, because that's going to be just Windows simulation inside of your Mac. So it's going to really run out of resources really fast. That's why I do recommend you to use Boot Camp if you're going to. Macs are usually going to be very good computers, and one thing you need to know is that when installing Boot Camp, you just split your hard drive into parts reserved for Windows and one part for Apple OS, so you don't lose anything. You can just have two systems at the same time and work on them. If you just want to switch, you reset your computer. What do we have here? Okay, Colombia. Wow, that's nice. 13 years of 3ds Max experience. That's well, pretty close to mine. Wow. Thank you very much. Okay, so let's talk a little bit to the chat. Hello, Franco. Nice to see you. Okay. You come from the product design background. I must say that this is exactly how I started. So it's going to be really refreshing for you moving on from just products to something bigger, a bit more creative. And ArcViz is really fun to do. So I enjoy it a lot. So Taiwan, wow, that's amazing, guys. I'm always so humbled to see you guys joining in from all over the world. That's just amazing. So let's continue talking about computers. So where should you look for computers? Well, it's all about just looking for the best price in your area, just sending some requests to your local clerks. But when it comes to just electronics, sometimes using Amazon is going to also be okay. It's not that I always use it, because I do like to talk to clerks in my area to see what's new, because I'm not always on top of on time with all the newest knowledge, and they have to, because this is their job. So when you will be logging into any website like Amazon or pretty much any shop, what you need to do first when hunting for laptops is to go for AMD or Intel. In this case, at the moment, AMD is a little bit ahead of Intel in terms of desktop PCs, and when it comes to laptops, they're pretty much even. But there's still going to be ups and downs to both, and we're going to talk about those in a second. Display size, it's not going to be that important. Just don't go for 4K monitors, or just the 4K screen is not going to be sufficient for 3ds Max at this moment. It does work. It's going to work okay, but it really eats a lot of resources. It's going to produce some kind of problems, and sometimes some manufacturers are not yet ready to really display that. The second thing we're going to go for is RAM installed. So this is going to be the most important thing right now, because we do know that we're just starting. We're either going to be just at the beginning of our journey, or we want to upgrade. So as I said, the best spot to start with is 16 gigabytes of RAM, but 8 gigabytes of RAM is still recommended, it's acceptable, because you always can buy a little bit more later on when you start earning a little bit of money on your work. So how about 2K monitor? I've been thinking of getting one. I do have 3 of those right now, and I must say that I love working on 2K monitor. That's exactly what your 3ds Max is designed for right now, so I would definitely recommend this. This is a SAD from Pakistan. I have 3 years of experience with 3ds Max and use Ryzen 9. That's a great computer. That's going to have approximately 50 seconds on Corona benchmark. That's a professional grade computer. So this is a desktop computer that we're talking about, and right now we're going to briefly go through laptops because we need to learn a little bit about them. So when it comes to Intel and AMD processors, you need to take in account that we're looking for i5, i7, i9, Ryzen 5, Ryzen 7, or Ryzen 9. So in this case, we can also tag all of them, but just by going for NVIDIA and Intel, this pretty much depletes our options. So 32 gigabytes is going to also be our option. So once that is done, you can pretty much see that all of our needs are really being addressed. So all we have to do right now is look for some kind of computers, but be advised that there's a lot of versions of your CPUs, and I haven't really talked about CPUs yet. In this case, you want to make sure that you are going to be able to decide, or let's say make an informed decision about your computer and what you're going to be using. So in my case, I'm using AMD Ryzen Threadripper. So that's going to come in handy later on when we will be checking out Corona benchmark. So what you always need to do before deciding what laptop you want is pretty much see if first it suits you, if the specs are okay, but it's going to also be what is also going to be important is to make sure that the processor has the right letter at the end, because in laptops it's going to have a really quite big impact. So okay. Okay. All of those letters at the end of our processors are going to have some meaning. So we need to make sure that we pick the right one. So laptops with H at the end are high performance, and Y and U are going to usually be let's say low power consumption units that don't really are really still suitable for work, but they're not going to have as high performance as regular laptops that are built for high performance. So H at the end is going to mean that it's high performance both for AMD and Intel. So make sure to read about that a little bit before you. A lot of our students come with MacBooks that are really suitable to work with, but the thing is that, as I said, you just need to install Bootcamp and you're good to go. In case of your laptop, always check if you've got what kind of letter at the end you have. I do recommend you to go for 16 gigabytes of RAM, and if you're going to build. Okay, I think we're back. So okay, so I think we're back right now. Probably some internet, or it's probably going to be YouTube's fault in this case. It stops sometimes. Wow, that's really bad. Okay, let's make sure that it's going to come back. Sometimes YouTube is just a little bit slower than we would like it to be. So let's continue talking about processors. So since we know that we're just looking for something that's going to be i9, i7, or Ryzen AMD, we're going to, I'm going to recommend you to, first of all, check coronarenderer.com and go to benchmark. So in this case, we can either go for resources and look for the benchmark there. So you can just check it out. Actually, it's probably in the downloads. Okay, so let's just go for benchmark the harder way. Okay, so what is Corona Benchmark? It's a very, very helpful tool to help you understand what your computer is capable of. So what are we going to do with this software? We're just going to install it, pretty much just run it on our computer, and it's going to test how fast our computer can render everything. So it's really good to go ahead and test those, test your laptop or your computer right here by typing in the name of your processor before you continue. Just don't look at the first page. Those are just really crazy builds that are usually going to be cooled with liquid nitrogen, and it's not going to be a good thing to look at this because it's very depressing. It's just those are supercomputers. Those are just the most expensive supercomputers. What we're looking for is just regular computers. So we can take on any kind of processor like Ryzen 7 4800H, and we're going to paste the name right in this bracket. So it's going to display all of those laptops that had exactly this this processor, and you can see what kind of performance you could expect of it. A lot of the people that bought laptops with this specific processor are just going to post their time, their performance, so you can decide what you're going to go for. But be advised to look for something not on the higher end of the bracket, because in this case those are usually a little bit overclocked versions of some voltage. So you may want to go for the safer options somewhere in the middle of the list. So this is going to be the most reliable. If you have a budget for AMD Threadrippers, cost a lot, but I will say quite contrary. Right now, Threadrippers aren't really that expensive, and you can get the previous generation. They don't have a lot of difference in times when it comes to work, but the newer versions are a little bit more stable. But it's not really about that, because what we're looking for in this case is the best laptop for us. So again, we can just copy the name of our processor, or even its main element of the name, so 10750, and we're just going to type it in. Again, we can see that there's almost no difference between those two laptops, but the Ryzen one seems to be a little bit better catch when it comes to the pricing. So it's not going to be a general rule that Ryzen computers are going to be cheaper, because it all depends on all the rest of peripherals. So whatever hardware you're going to go for, remember that your GPU is third, or it's third on the list of important elements. First, we want to go for a lot of RAM, because this is going to allow us to build bigger scenes. So for example, think about this in this way. So if we're going to be dealing with just a regular scene, so this is a very basic scene of a bedroom that we already talked about during one of our webinars. So if you're going to have a little bit less RAM than I do, you may actually need to do a little bit of trickery. For example, you may want to do a bit narrower shots so you can remove some of the objects. So you're not going to be limited in this sense. And if you need to do the wider shot, there's always going to be a render farm waiting for you. And believe me, they are not as expensive as buying a supercomputer to just render in 30 seconds. So right now I'm going to extract our Corona benchmark to see how my computer performs right now. So this is how it really looks. This is going to be a very simple this is going to be a very simple computation. We can see that usually it's not going to take a lot of time on professional grade equipment, but I must give you those brackets just so you can know. Anything below 3 minutes is considered to be quite fast. Below 2 minutes is, or even approximately closer to 1 minute, is a high grade computer. So we're not looking for those. If you're going to just start, or you're already quite advanced, you're aiming for something that's going to be approximately 2 or 3 minutes. If your computer is going to be slower than 5 minutes, you probably could consider upgrading. So my benchmark is done, almost done, but it's still okay. There's 5 seconds left. When the benchmark is done, you can pretty much see how your computer is performing. So you can submit the results, copy to clipboard, or just go to forum and see for yourself what exactly the benchmark is was for you. But I do recommend you that you just copy the name of your processor into those brackets. So in my case, it's 2970 and WX. In this case, we can see that some of the computers are faster than mine and some of them are going to be slower. So as I said, you want to look for those in the middle of the road, because I'm pretty sure that you're not going to be overclocking, you're not going to be fiddling with voltage of your processors, because it's just going to be a nonsense at this point, because just gaining 1 second is probably not going to be worth your time. So guys, and now when we know a little bit about our computers, why is RAM important? Because RAM is going to allow you to have more items in your scene. So the more RAM you have, the more items you can actually use. So please note how much RAM is going to be rising right now, because I've created 50 copies of this tree. And to be honest, it's quite demanding. It already exceeds 7 million of polygons. So if we're going to continue with this process, we're going to see a little bit of a clog at some point. So I do recommend you to get at least 16 gigabytes of RAM to work really comfortably, especially on interiors. If you're going to do mostly exteriors, consider buying more than 24 gigabytes of RAM. But even if your computer is a little bit slower, weaker, and you're starting with just a basic laptop that you bought for your college, it's probably going to be good enough. Please tell Corona or V-Ray is good or best output. When it comes to Corona and V-Ray, they're pretty similar. I must say that I prefer Corona because it's easier to learn, it's faster to work with, and you don't have to be an engineer in 3D graphics to understand what exactly you're doing, because Corona allows you to be more creative, it allows you to be a designer instead of a technician. That was my choice, mostly because it's just allowing me to be more creative. You can see my portfolio. I like to test out what Corona is really capable of, and when I'm doing my projects, I always try to make sure that I have a little bit of fun with it, because, well, we're not doing it as a chore, so let's make sure that we're going to keep it this way. In conclusion, I must say that when it comes to PC, because that's another thing that we're going to be talking about, when building your PC, remember that the memory is going to be just important for the work and rendering. It's going to allow you to decide how large your scene is. The CPU is going to decide how fast your scene is going to be responding. So for example, let's close this really large scene right now, because it already ate up 72 gigabytes of my RAM. So we can pretty much say that with all of those trees, you will have a little bit of problem if you're just going to be using copies. Luckily, when dealing dealing with Corona, we can use scatters that save the tremendous RAM, so you're not going to run into this problem almost and pretty much never. When it comes to regular scenes and how they work, your processor and gigahertz it has is going to be responsible for mostly how fast you're going to be performing the tasks. Not only selecting but also opening the windows. Sometimes it's going to also be related to your hard drive, but mostly it's going to be related to the gigahertz of your processor. A processor is going to be the heart, the brain of your computer, and memory, well, I don't have any other smart way to put it. It's just your memory. It's how many objects your scene can remember at one time. Your computer can remember in your scene at one time, to be more precise. And when the RAM is going to be exceeded, it's going to be using your disk. So I do recommend you that you also have a fast disk, preferably at least one SSD. They're awfully cheap right now. And okay, going back to our computers and what we're going to really do with them. We do try to render with our computers, that's obvious. What is going to be important? What is going to be important is that you download Corona Benchmark when preparing for a course like ours or work with 3ds Max to test how fast your computer really is. So that's going to be a huge help. And right now, after showing you all of those elements, we can talk a little bit about building the computers and bigger desktops. So in this case, I'm not going to give you any specific parts because, as I said, right now it's one way, and in 2 weeks it could be that the new company is going to give you the biggest revelation ever, and they're using those super quantum computers for $5. I don't want to give you some false information. I want this to be, well, more of a guide that you can revisit at any time. So in summary, when you're going to be building your desktop, you need to know that you first start from the amount of RAM, you then go for processor, and you can use sites like PCBuilder.com or pretty much any site that's going to be similar to this one. So okay, thank you. Okay, so pretty much any sort of website like this that's going to give you PC building guides. It's going to show you all the components that work with it, but we're not going to be picking anything really, because we know that our main guide is going to be your budget. So in your budget, you need to look for laptops and computers that I mentioned. And once you are interested and you know what is going to be inside of your budget, you just simply type in the name of your processor in here, check how fast it is, and then you can make an informed purchase. In contrary, it doesn't really working with ArcViz doesn't require a supercomputer. You can start with just a regular laptop. It could be also MacBook or any Apple device. But in the second category, you're going to need a boot camp. All you need to do is test how much your RAM you have, and how fast your computer is. And that can be done using your processor. What is also important is that it doesn't really matter if you're going to use a supercomputer or just a regular one, because I can show you one of our students' work. It's a recent group that's ongoing. It's one of our students' work, and she's, if I'm correct, she's using 32 gigabytes of RAM, and this student is using 16, or I may be just mixing those two, but they both have fairly decent computers, but none of them are supercomputers. So you can actually see some peripherals. So it's actually the U version, so it's a low voltage. It's a little bit slower, if I recall correctly, but it's really going to be good. The gigahertz. Anything above 2 gigahertz is okay. 3 gigahertz is fantastic. 4 or 5 is just professional grade, super fast. And I do recommend you to check both of those, but in the end, it's all going to come down to your Corona benchmark. Is it possible to do Corona renders with GPU? No, and that's why GPUs are really not important for us. At this moment, Corona does not plan to do any GPU rendering because it's just faster and you get a little bit, you get better results at the same price range. So if we would compare a same quality render done on GPU versus the same quality render done with CPU, it's pretty much even transaction. But GPU rendering tends to be a little bit faster on, let's say, mid-core level. So if you're just going for medium quality, Mac quality, I would say, GPU is for you. But if you're going for high quality renders, you probably want to go for CPU. Okay, so as I said, it doesn't really matter if you're going to use a monster computer or just a regular one. By joining VizAcademy, we can teach you how to turn this type of image into this type of image. Also remember that it doesn't, as I said, it doesn't really matter if you're going to have a computer that's a monster at the very beginning, because it's just going to take you a little bit longer to render, and if you cannot wait that long, you can always use your CPU. So I think this is going to be last one was 60. Thank you, Michelle. It's actually Michelle's work, so she's right now in our chat. So thank you very much for joining in, Michelle. So you helped me a little bit in this case. So as I said, we're just showing you the current group's progress to make sure that you can understand that our students are capable of creating beautiful images in under 7 weeks during our course, but obviously later they do create them in a matter of days, not weeks. So this was very refreshing. This was really interesting to talk about, and I think that with all this, you can now make a decision on what to buy when hunting for your new computer to work in ArchViz. Also, the builds that I mentioned are going to be suitable for ArchiCAD. They're going to be suitable for any type of Lumion or let's say Revit, AutoCAD, pretty much any CAD work, but we're trying to mostly focus on our processor and our 3ds Max, as this is the software of our choice. We also used Photoshop, but as I said, it's just one of those gimmicks. So soon we will be hosting next webinar, so be on a lookout for new webisodes, as one of our students recently called it. This would be enough for today about computer building, but I do recommend you to visit our website and see you at our next webinar. So again, thank you very much for your attention, and see you next time. Well, be on a lookout on our YouTube. Thank you very much. Have a nice evening.